Hello and welcome, dear friends, back to the channel. And boy, do I have a monster of an episode for you today. This is one that I've been looking forward to for a very long time, joined by dear friend and brother Nate Kap to get into one of the most fundamental esoteric concepts that has ever existed, and that is the myth of Osiris. Understanding this is key to understanding ourselves and the spiritual journey of development and evolution. And in this episode, we get into the nitty-gritty of how to truly understand this deep and rich tradition coming all the way out of ancient Egypt and probably even before that. As all truth is timeless, the names and the symbols may change, but the concepts themselves are eternal. So I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did, and that is starting right now, so stay tuned. All right, welcome in everybody to another episode of the Wizard Factory podcast, where together we explore deeper knowledge of the universe through ourselves. My name is Logan Hart. If you're new to the channel, we're all about giving you the spiritual tools and mindsets to live a more free and empowered life. So if you haven't yet, subscribe, click the bell, and drop down and hit the like button real quick on your way in. And let's go ahead and kick things off. So I am joined again by dear brother and absolute informational powerhouse, especially in all things mystical and esoteric, my good friend Nate Kap. He was here on the channel before as a guest to speak about the language of the birds. So that was a really fantastic segment. And we're here to breach one of the, if not the topic of all topics, the myth of Osiris. So strap in, this is going to be a monster of an episode, information packed. Get yourself a cup of coffee, maybe even kind of take a couple of sessions to get through this one, but I promise it will be worth your while. So without further ado, welcome to the channel, Nate. Always good to have you here, my brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Logan. Yeah, great to be back on the Wizard Factory. And yes, this is something I've been looking forward to, something I haven't really done. I haven't put together my own presentation of this yet because I've just really been gathering, eclectic information of the Osiris myth. And so it's a huge topic. So I'm really excited to dive into this, and I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity. So
Absolutely.
we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, so maybe this would be a sort of a good primer to kind of see where you're at with the information that you've compiled, as far as in future projection of when you decide to put a presentation together or put this into your podcast. This will be a nice precursor to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm super excited for this, man. And I'm pretty much going to let you guide this as far as where we go, how you want to start things off. I mean, this is a huge undertaking, and we're going to do this all in one go. So where would you like to begin, sir?
Well, yeah, undertaking is an understatement. It's extraordinarily massive. And, I'm still digging very deeply into this information. And so I don't have all the answers. I don't think anybody does, because it's so big. But that doesn't mean that you can't, get the overarching picture of what this science reveals, because I do believe that you can. I don't think it's just something that just goes on and on and on. I think you really do hit some kind of pinnacle, or some kind of peak at some point where you can really start to see how beautiful this science is and how important it is to preserving it. So on this show, what I plan to reveal is, more of the esoteric knowledge, the internal science of the self. And but I'm going to share some of the exoteric information as well, so that way we can make a better connection to how this science goes together. And that's something very important to keep in mind, is that anytime you're dealing with the occult, anytime you're dealing with ancient Egypt, it's very important to keep in mind that esoteric and exoteric must go together. You have to look at things, in all ways, but especially those two ways.
Holistically.
Because, right, holistically, because you want to understand the outer part that, a lot of people can understand, who typically see things from more of a material point of view. And then you also want to understand things, with dealing with the spiritual realm, or the unseen forces in nature. um Excuse me, my light. It keeps blinking on and off.
It's the
uh
unseen forces of nature letting you know
yeah,
that they're
yeah,
listening.
I was thinking that as soon as I said it. That's what I was thinking. But I really encourage people to study the esoteric mythos collectively, and do this from an array of scholars and authors who are either well known or not well known, because it's going to give you a better, bigger idea of what has been preserved, for one, because the exoteric knowledge is pretty readily available. Not so much of this, science. I mean, thanks to people like Wallace Budge, or even Plutarch, who has really been the, revered as, the guy who really preserved this type of knowledge of Osiris the best. But also, I would say Gerald Massey, and these men are among the few who have done the eclectic homework to really bring to us this knowledge, especially from an exoteric point perspective. And I would say that they were nescient with the understanding of the mystery traditions. And that's important, because even though, because they knew deep down, I know that they knew deep down how important this knowledge was. They just didn't have the mystery traditions to be able to break it down, aka traditions like, Freemasonry, or especially esoteric Freemasonry, which really is the ancient Egyptian science when you really understand it. But there's modern Freemasonry, and then there's ancient Freemasonry. And I like to call it the ancient Egyptian science, because that way it doesn't get stigmatized. And also, it really is, when you understand the modern science, it really is the same science. Okay, because Freemasonry, especially esoteric Freemasonry, the way that I understand it, it is the central esoteric system. Okay. And so, but I just wanted to make that clear. So one of the things that I think is very challenging is, where do you start with this mystery? Where do you start with Osiris? And I would say you essentially just have to dive right in, because if you think about like a puzzle, just think of a picture, think of a picture perfect picture, right?
Hmm.
And that picture, let's just say that it represents the blueprint of life or truth. Okay. And let's say that you cut that picture into, I don't know, 10,000 pieces. So it's like, you could look at it as a puzzle, right? At that point. So just imagine taking that whole picture, and then turning it into a pile, and then throwing those pieces, scattering them across the four corners of the earth. That is essentially what has happened to this pure form of a story, this myth. And I mean, 10,000 is probably a too big of a number, but you get my point. It's about dismemberment. It's about taking something pure and basically segregating it, or forgetting about it, or
Compartmentalizing, maybe.
compartmentalizing it. That's right. And so these, we have to understand that Osiris is the central figure to this whole mystery. He is the legend, a legend meaning someone or something that deserves attention, something that is central. That's another thing that, if you're familiar with my work, I talk a lot about the circle dot or the spiral symbol, okay, and how they overlap. And essentially, what I try to help people understand is to pay attention to what is central about a mystery, because whatever is central about a mystery is really the aim for, you know like a dartboard, right? You're trying to hit the bullseye. So Osiris would be the bullseye. I mean, he would really be the whole dartboard. But the point is to understand that anything that has a central component to it that's worth studying, that's where you're going to find the truth in things. And so this um this myth of Osiris uh is what preserves an ancient spiritual connection to nature, and to the cosmos. And basically it preserves the sciences of our relationship to things like the moon, or the sun, or the stars, or the planets, or the elements, or the elemental powers on earth or in the universe. And so that is what essentially gives us freedom in this world, to know those things, to have a relationship with those things. I would say, Logan would agree, this is animism, to have this relationship with these living things, right?
Yes.
And it's so important to see it that way, because when you have a relationship with the things that are making your life what they are. I mean, think about it. The sun is nutrients, it's light, it is warmth, it is so many, symbolically so many things, especially being raised in consciousness. Or the moon, which deals with emotions, which deals with um, giving us light in the dark. Or it allows us to understand a natural calendar during a year, an annual cycle. So these things, if we have a relationship with them, we can begin to take back our sovereignty. And that is how I understand Osiris, to preserve that type of knowledge. And it goes so much deeper than that, than what I'm explaining. So I think that's a good way to sum up how I want to approach this.
That's beautiful. Really great job kind of setting the table there as we're going to start kind of unfolding this vast mystery. So I guess maybe we can start with, we're talking about Egyptian, Khemetian mysticism here. This was one of their central figures, right? He was the king of the gods, essentially. Is that right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. And so this is the archetypal hero's journey, essentially, of the evolution of consciousness. And I mean, what could be more profound and important than that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's something that has lasted. It's re-emerging, it's resurrecting right now. This information is resurrecting. This is information that really does restore our sovereignty, truly, when we really take it into ourselves. But what you said about the basically the God of gods, you know it's just, it goes so far when you really just keep looking into it. Like, for instance, Osiris is the god of the dead. He's the god of or death. He's the god of the underworld. He's the god of creation. He's the god of resurrection and rebirth and fertility and soil and um water and corn. He's the corn god, and he's a lunar god. He is the first solar deity when you really understand the science of what Osiris is.
Mm,
And as we go through these slides, we're really going to see how this truly is, and how the when you're dealing with the occult, when you're dealing with esotericism, this is where, and that's what I plan on showing people, is how these things reveal actual sciences in nature. And so that's the beauty of the zodiac. And if you want to, we can go ahead and get started on the zodiac, because I think that it's going to take some time to go through this, probably the most time of all these slides. But I think it'll be really good, because I know that Logan is also very he understands astrology, which definitely is part of this zodiac. And so I'm hoping that Logan will chime in and share some things too while we're going through this. But if you want to, we can go ahead and start on that.
absolutely. So we've got we've got the slides pulled up here. We're looking at the zodiac with the sun in the center on the solar cross. And as you can see, there are the different seasons corresponding with the kind of life stages of Osiris. And if you're listening on the audio podcast, just know this is going to be a more visual based segment today than is usual. So if you haven't yet, maybe this would be a good one to check out on YouTube, so that you're getting the full effect of the slides and everything being presented here. So,
Well, the yeah, and I want to second that. Slides are everything to the way that we learn. And because I've always been a very visual learner, but I think a lot of people they take the slides for granted, and don't understand how the knowledge that is associated with the slide is actually creating a more holistic picture. And so that's you have to have a big picture mind to really deal with this type of information.
mm,
And so when it comes to this the science of the zodiac, there is so much that really goes into this, that is there's just no way to simplify it, in a way that really gets people to see, how it really unfolds, in the sense of, it's just going to take a lot more time to really go through this. But I am going to simplify it, but I'm going to try to help guide people through this zodiac, so that way you can really start to see the direction of the ideas of, the cyclical nature of birth, growth, decay, and then death. That's
and then
so
rebirth.
And rebirth, right? And the rebirth something, I mean, that really is what this whole thing is all about.
Hmm.
And
And it doesn't get more animistic than that. Looking at the
yes,
cyclical nature, you see this in the runes, for example. I've been really, really heavily studying the runes, and it's the same thing. The runes, you know, are it's a circle, it's a circuit, and the end is just the beginning and it starts over. It's not just, if you look at the Roman alphabet or whatever, it just goes from left to right and then it stops. That's a very Western left brain typical standard, which is far removed from the more naturalistic patterns and structures that can be observed.
I agree with that. And I'm going to really, hopefully, demonstrate what the Western religious, Abrahamic religion, that is holding people back from really seeing the full picture.
Mm.
And so basically,
Solar cult distortions, essentially.
yeah, it is a distortion of the solar cult. It is a degradation of the solar cult, where the solar cult actually had beautiful science in it, which is what I'm going to share. But then it got corrupted, and I'm going to get into that. So essentially, you have to look at this as the now, and then this orientation. Now, I want to really, really hammer home on this part. The orientation of the zodiac here is what I use personally, because for a few really important reasons, because a lot of people see the zodiac from right to left, in counterclockwise, and some people even have it flipped upside down and backwards. That's how I see their ways of the zodiac. But I think you should definitely just know how to orient yourself. But I think the easiest way to go about this is to align the zodiac with the clock that we know today. And the reason I say that is because you have 12 as high noon, okay? And
Mm-hmm.
then you have you think about, 3 being where Set is, 6 being where Osiris is, and then Horus would be where 9 is. And I say this because if we align the clock to this zodiac and go clockwise, it automatically helps us stay oriented. But even more so, the where Sagittarius goes to Capricorn should always be at the winter solstice, which should always be at the lowest point. And the highest point should always be at the between Gemini and Cancer at the summer solstice. And that is crucial to understand when you're trying to make sense of this solar
Mm-hmm.
mythos cycle of Osiris, okay, or really the zodiac in general.
Once again, orientation is
Yes.
paramount, just like your earth brain presentation. You have to understand how to position things to read correctly what you're actually looking at and studying.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Even the word orient means the direction east,
Mm-hmm.
because the direction east is the direction of light. And, you know, I'm going to just go ahead and say this now. If you can just orient your brain to understand, the right brain is in the, if you're looking at the map of the earth, the right brain, the orientation that we're mostly familiar with, the right brain with the eastern part of the world, and then the left brain with the western part of the world. And think in terms of consciousness in that way, and you'll have a lot that is revealed to you. But also, in this case, the way that I'm describing this, the zodiac here, the bottom half would be more associated with the right brain, and then the left brain would be associated with the upper half, and that the upper half would be associated with the north half, the north hemisphere of Earth, and the bottom half would be associated with um the southern hemisphere of Earth. Okay.
Okay.
And that it helps us stay oriented by having an image that actually kind of, you know, portrays that. And also keep in mind is that this there is ambiguity. You know, when you're dealing with the mysteries and you're dealing with these ancient sciences and these houses of the zodiac, and you know, the 12 versus 10 versus 13, you know, there's a lot of ambiguity, but if we can just stay true to the 12 in the solar, because we're dealing with the greater mysteries, and the greater mysteries are dealing with the solar mythos. Okay. The lesser mysteries would be dealing with the stellar mythos, which is the seven. Okay. And also the lunar, but that's a lot more advanced, and I don't want to go there. But to start off, we have this zodiac, which is where we have to orient ourselves with the sun going through in a clockwise direction on this particular zodiac. The sun goes through a clockwise direction through each house during an annual year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, this is very important to understanding consciousness, and the way that Osiris has to be looked at here, and the way that I set up this whole chart, is to show that Osiris is connected as the spirit with each one of these other archetypes, which would be Ra, Set, and of course, you know, Osiris is the god of the dead. Okay, that's what he's mostly known for. And then Horus being the um the uh the god of resurrection. Okay, the rebirth, or the hero. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk us through where the sun, being Osiris, the god of the living. Okay, that is one of the key points. The god of the living is going from the or the whole spring and summer solstice of light. He's he's going down through Cancer and Leo and Virgo. And this means that the sun is going on its way to fall. Okay, so the sun is falling, right? It's going down into uh, a autumn, which is a tomb, right? And
Autumn.
so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then so this you have this house right before Osiris enters the tomb, and this house is called Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
Virgo is the virgin, and in esoteric Freemasonry, the virgin is the weeping virgin. And the weeping virgin is essentially the part of the sacred feminine that is you know, weeping because the sun is going down to its death. And also there is the virgin is holding a well, in this case the virgin is holding some three sticks of wheat, or it could also be what's called the acacia, the sprig of acacia, which is an evergreen.
Mm.
And so an evergreen is what lives through the winter. It's evergreen. Okay.
Mm.
And this is happening where, you know, the sun is it's making its trek down below the equator. So anytime that the sun is going below the equator from in the north, then this represents the sun going down into a tomb, okay? It goes below that equator in the autumn equinox. That's very, very key. So the Virgin is hoping that the sun will rise again.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you think of the the mortal life is about death, and then the immortal life is about the spirit continuing, right? And so or the soul continuing. And so this is what the sprig of acacia represents, because it's the evergreen. As all other life, green life dies in the fall, the evergreen lives
Mm-hmm.
as in immortality,
Right.
right? To its
It's a
next
symbol of that,
birth.
the perseverance through that.
Yes.
And those
Yes.
familiar with the myth of Hiram Abiff, that's the sprig of acacia that's written on the tomb, the tomb. So that's a good parallel, because Hiram Abiff is essentially just another allegory of this same exact story.
Right.
Which it's funny
Hiram Abiff.
because Nate and I covered this a few weeks ago on his podcast, which I don't think that episode is out yet. Maybe by the time this is published, it will be up. And either way, I can put the link down below for anyone wanting to listen to that. But I would say these would go very well together.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought up Hiram Abiff, because Hiram Abiff is the modern version, small version of Osiris. So he is an allegory, just like Osiris. He is an archetype. And so the acacia in Africa would be actually called the Erica, which is, that's what they used for burial, where they would, put the acacia right at the western point of the or western side of the casket or the tomb, right? So this is very much tied with Hiram Abiff, and I think that Hiram Abiff is so important to understand, because he, as an archetype, is a bridge back to Osiris. And it's a very similar science to what we're talking about here with this zodiac. Okay. And this zodiac really is, in Freemasonry, you have these, what's called the tracing board. That's what the zodiac is. It's a tracing board,
Mm.
because you're tracing out this
the,
information.
the path of the sun.
Right. You're tracing out the path of the sun, the path of the moon. You're tracing out the
Consciousness.
consciousness, you're tracing out the elemental powers, everything. I mean, this holds everything in it that really truly matters. So the sun going into the darkness, or under that autumn equinox line that you see, the sun going down is being received by darkness, how we understand it in the northern hemisphere of Earth, right? And so when the sun is going away, essentially going down south, it gets the light gets less and less and less. So Set is the brother in the myth. Set is the brother of Osiris. And Set has to be really understood at a very, very deep level of just understanding that he just is. He's a power. He's a power in nature. He is darkness. And this is just to help us understand our own darkness within ourselves. And so, Set gets a bad rep because he's always associated with evil, which he does perform evil things. But it's about understanding that he is essentially just a power in nature. He's a force in
Mm.
nature. He is the darkness that consumes the light, because in the northern hemisphere during the from fall equinox to the spring equinox, the amount of light that we get is um, very small in comparison to the dark. So that being said, the sun is going into this darkness, and this darkness, so Set he builds this box or this tomb or this coffin, and this is also very important because Set is associated with deception. So he deceives his brother by um, having him get inside of a box, just to fit him in this box. He deceived him to make him think that it was something good, and then he shut it with his 72 disciples, who then took that box, that tomb, and threw it into the Nile River. Okay. And then that's where he eventually drowns. But how that works in nature is that the sun is leaving, and it's very deceiving because it's like, well, is it coming back? It's like it's going down and down and down all the way down to the south. And so and plus life is starting to, you know, fall, like the leaves turn colors and fall, green starts to go away, warmth starts to go away, and it's very deceiving whether or not this sun is going to come back. So then what so Set is the one who deceives Osiris, his brother, drowns him essentially. And then what happens is Isis starts to come in the picture. So Isis is the sacred feminine goddess, wife slash sister of Osiris. But in this case, we have to understand her as the wife. And so she gets word that her husband has been drowned. And so once she gets word that he has drowned, then what happens is, and the reason she gets word that he has drowned is because she recognizes there's a little bit of light of the sun right before and I'm going to get into the science of the lunar, but there's a little bit of light from the sun reflecting off the moon. And she embodies the moon. But Osiris embodies the light of the moon because Osiris is the sun. So when she finds him, she she finds him in a tree, like the casket is engulfed by this tree. And this would be, the tree of life, or the physical body too. You could look at it as. So this tree of life is where this casket is, because, this is about understanding the heart of the tree, and, the mysteries of the tree, the sacred tree of life. Now, when that casket was found, then Set gets word that it was found, and he sends his disciples out to, get that, go grab that box, and he opens it up and takes Osiris out, and he begins to chop him up into 14 pieces. Okay. And this is very significant. The number 14 in this case is very significant. Okay. Because we're dealing with the lunar cycle. So Osiris, the reason that Osiris so when you look at it literally, it's about understanding that darkness found the light. The light had come back out in the dark, because he knew that it was the sun below the equator. he knew that it was the sun because the light of the sun was making a full moon.
Mm.
And so what he did was he chopped Osiris up into 14 pieces, and that 14 pieces is the waning angles of the moon from full moon to new moon. So each angle, each day, 14 days of each piece of light of the moon is the pieces of Osiris, because that is the sunlight reflecting off the moon. So he ritualistically murders his brother in as the lunar god. Okay. And so we also have to understand, the sun going into the winter solstice is the waning. Okay, the waning of the sun. So the waning means lesser and lesser light, right? And so it's the same with the moon. So because the moon is the receiver of that light. And so this is also about understanding Isis as the moon. Okay. So then what happens is, so this is going down to the winter solstice. The sun is going down to the winter solstice. And also keep in mind that Scorpio, that the house that you see between the winter solstice and the autumn equinox, is associated with Set. So Set is it is the scorpion. He is the scorpion that delivers that deathly blow to his brother, cutting him up and sending him. Basically, he takes all the pieces and scatters them throughout the whole world. Okay. So what that means is he's taken that pure light, okay, of the sun, and he is scattering that light out to the four corners of earth, being the material. Okay. So that is why, Set is very, very important in understanding the dark occult, because you're dealing with the unseen forces in nature, and you're dealing with the way that nature shows you in this mythology, the science of taking something pure and breaking it apart into pieces. In this case, 14 pieces. Scattering that is the same as having the knowledge of, like, let's say, the few or the ruling elite in the R complex system of control in this world. Well, each piece is, like you said, Logan, earlier, each piece is compartmentalized,
Hmm.
each piece of light.
And that's how the dark occult works in general. I
That's
mean,
right.
everything from even like terrorist cells, government agencies, they all use this compartmentalization sort of structure to it essentially functionally it allows them to conduct operations where each piece is serving its role, but it's also kept in ignorance of any of the other pieces at play. They only have enough operational knowledge to perform the task that they are specifically delegated, and they have zero knowledge of anything else, not only to prevent them from compromising the larger mission at hand, because they can't compromise what they don't know about the other factions and what they're doing.
Right.
But it also makes them easier to control, because each of those without the full knowledge cannot be truly autonomous,
Right.
because they don't have the higher knowledge of what's going on. It's like trying to build a bicycle and you only know how a pedal works or something like that.
Very well said. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like these this science is showing how this idea is preserved in the darkest place. It's right at the winter solstice. And so this is where these rulers, these or so-called rulers, these so-called, I mean, they really are dominators, but these people, so-called authority, are the ones that rule from the darkest dark. And they understand this knowledge very, very well. And they understand how deeply rooted it is within us, because it's about understanding that we've been disoriented and we've been cut off from our relationship with nature,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So we're trying to rebuild that. We're trying to refine that. We're trying to discover this information to put these pieces back together so we can take back our sovereignty and get out of ignorance, because that's what this darkness also represents. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just ignorance, but that is, we have to understand darkness is associated with ignorance, but it's also associated with the sacred feminine,
Mm-hmm.
okay, which is about understanding the unseen forces in nature. And that's why this is the underworld. Okay. This is this spiritual journey
Right.
through the underworld.
Transformation,
Yeah.
alchemy, that's where that
Yeah.
ties in.
Right. And so we cannot, so the land of the living, and I'm going to keep really hammering this. The Osiris being the god of the living is about the R complex, because one of the most beautiful things that we could ever understand about Osiris is he embodies the R complex. That's what he represents. And I'm going to get into that science later, but the land of the living is about ruling the land of the living from the R complex to keep people surviving, just like animals. And so when people are ignorant of their dark aspects of self, then they remain controlled by that R complex, aka Osiris.
Wow.
And therefore, when you go through the underworld and get to learn Osiris, you're the one who gives you life, the one who is symbolically gives you life, which is true because it's the R complex, which is what keeps you alive. But when you understand that and you live above it, now you don't need a ruler. You don't need an R complex ruler over your mind. Now you've developed your mind into a higher order thinking where you actually have free will, where your free will is ignited.
And that's raw, correct?
Yeah, and I'm going to get to that, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, you're already on it. So,
Mm-hmm.
so as these pieces get scattered throughout the world, now, so this, Set, oh yeah, keep this in mind. Set the, if you look at the depictions of Set on the walls, you'll see that, and you can even see it in this slide, that he has two pillars coming out of his head. And these are, you could look at them as horns. Okay. But these pillars, I like to call them pillars because it's about understanding Set is the embodiment of materialism, which is being a part in dualism. So that is because it's about understanding that he's right there, right at the horizon. Okay. Where the sun is setting. That's why we say sunset.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and also just keep in mind that this is about westing, this idea of westing. I'll get into that a little bit later, but it's just about understanding the sun. When the sun is going west, that represents that light is going down and
Descending. Yeah.
yeah, it's descending. That means consciousness is going, back down into your R complex.
Your consciousness descending, your condescending.
Condescending. Yeah, exactly.
I have a quick
like
question for you.
Sure.
This just came up when I've never thought of the horns representing the two towers. That's really interesting. And because we're essentially talking about Freemasonry, and this is where this comes from, is all just Egyptian mythology and esoterica. Could you mentioned that represents the materialism. Is that what the Temple of Solomon is? Because the temple is like, it's just that. It's the temple. It's the house. It's like the body for the soul. The body is not, you. It's just the container. It's the materialistic, aspect of you.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think that as I go through this more, I'm also going to get into that science when we get into the Khemetian Trinity. But I just to help that be understood, it's like when you're going through this underworld, the soul journey, what you're trying to do is you're trying to understand both the light side of self and the dark side of self. So we're in dualism. That's what the black and white checkers are all about, is being, a
Mm-hmm.
part in dualism and not really knowing the difference between the two. And just like this idea that you can't understand the one without understanding the two. So in order for there to be unity, there has to be consciousness of both, sacred feminine, sacred masculine, darkness, light. And therefore, that's where you start to find that middle part of self,
Mm-hmm.
equilibrium. And so, as going through the underworld, what you're trying to do is find, it's like your material self. Just imagine your material self is light that begins up here, where you only think in terms of everything is just material because that's all you can see. But then you go down in this journey, and you basically, if you just imagine your whole body is the temple, because it is, right? And you're going down to the underworld to discover the other part of yourself that you didn't know existed. And once you do that, now you start to, this is where the idea of awakening the Kundalini energy, or the double helix, right? And so once you go down to this lowest point, and this is, you could also look at this as like hitting rock bottom, because a lot of people, when they hit their rock bottom, there's really only up from there. And that means, to raise your frequency to heal yourself. It's healing because you've suffered. And so this idea of going through the underworld, I like to relate it to the temple of the body, because I look at it as, when you understand the chakra, the Vedic chakra system, the energy centers, and going down to your root, that's essentially, going down to the where you have your death. Osiris is dealing with this is dealing with eschatology, which is final things. You're going down to your final part of your material self, where your material self is ruled by your R complex. And so, what you're doing is you're going down and you're figuring things out in the underworld. And now you're raising yourself, your spirit, back into your body, because the spirit has not been awakened. Your care has not been awakened. So that brings me to the next part. Isis is the embodiment of care.
Mm-hmm.
She went and found all 13 pieces of Osiris,
All
right?
but the fun part.
All but the fun part, right? She missed out on the fun part, could not find that part. So she had to have somebody named Thoth to make another one,
Yeah,
to
must have been
fashion
kind of
another one.
small, needle in a haystack.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So that being said, Isis is about this is to me one of the most important parts, because if Isis represents care, the sacred feminine, and this is right, when finding out that truth has just been scattered throughout the whole world, and it's up to you to go and search for that, because your care is your love for truth being Osiris symbolically, right? So your love for light, and maybe you don't find every piece of it, which is why she doesn't find the phallus. But the point is that we also have a messenger lunar god named Thoth. So Thoth is the lunar god who is a messenger, being this messenger from the sky, who comes down with this, this phallus. And and also to keep in mind that a fish ate his phallus. That's why they couldn't find it, because a fish just saw that phallus and got hungry and ate that thing.
Thought it was a worm.
So, yeah, thought it was a worm. Yeah. So the fish has it, so we got to find the fish, and that's also another important part of this. But the point is,
well, is it to do with Pisces?
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
Pisces is right here on the precipice before coming back into the daylight.
Right, and that's very important. So, this is one of the, and I'm going to explain this more in the Khemetian Trinity slide, but this is where things are really interesting when it comes to consciousness, is that Osiris is no longer at this point, because care has found those pieces. Osiris is no longer in need to be the god of the living. He is now the god of the dead. And that is one of the most powerful things to recognize, because that means that the R complex is no longer the dominator of the brain. Okay, and so in Freemasonry, that would be, the widow's son being Horus, or being Hiram Abiff. The widow's son, the reason that she's a widow is because the father aspect of the triune brain falls away. The R complex falls away, in the sense of it is no longer needed to control the mind for survival. Now their care has been found, and there begins a resurrection, right?
Res erection.
Yeah, res erection. Yeah. And so, and this is about the raising of the pillar, because, the pillar has been, crumbled, and now it's being rebuilt. And so, this is the pillar is being, resurrected. Osiris is being resurrected, but he can no longer be the god of the living. Now he's the god of the dead. Okay, and this is so important when we look at this bottom half of the zodiac, and I put the dark part of it, because this is dealing with the underworld. It's also, Osiris is the god of water. Okay, so this is also water. And it also, think about the ark, the ship, the ark. Okay, this is where so many people, I mean, it's just, it amazes me how much this has been literalized. This idea of the deluge and the ark, with
Noah's
all these
Ark, yeah,
animals. Yeah, Noah's Ark. Yeah, that's what I meant. This is so much more ancient, because that ark is the chest. It is the coffin. It is Osiris. But it's not just Osiris. It's about understanding the houses of the whole zodiac it is the zodiac. zodiacal
Mm-hmm.
animals. Those are the animals in the ark,
Mm-hmm.
because the ark is going where in the deluge. The water is the bottom half, the fall and winter. Okay, so this is where the deluge is taking place, because it's about a cycle. It's about, especially in the solar mythos. Okay, in the stellar mythos, it's a cycle, in the northern circumpolar constellations, dealing with, well, it's all the northern circumpolar constellations, all the stars, the seven stars. But the go ahead.
Could arc be actually literally referring to the arc, the arcing trajectory
Yeah.
through those underworld signs?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why typically there's a rainbow associated with the
Yes.
ark.
And I'm also thinking Ark of the Covenant.
Right.
What
Yep.
is the covenant? It's the
Yep.
acacia. It's
Yeah.
the promise that the son will return, that it's
Right.
not the end.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's what
right.
the rainbow represented.
Yep.
Was a promise, according to
Yeah.
the Bible. God's promise that he will never murder all the people with rainwater
Right.
again.
Right. Yeah. It's this whole thing is all about timekeeping and cycles, but we're trying to make sense of it so we're not controlled by this whole mechanism. Okay, it's a very beautiful science, but when we remain ignorant of it, we have, there's a control program that's controlling this whole thing.
Totally.
So to me, this is one of the most amazing discoveries I've had lately. And I know that I'm still trying to work it out. And I just want to be honest with that. But I also know that now I understand that the bottom half of this zodiac is also soil. Okay. So Osiris is watering the soil, right? Because this is the time of the what we would call the flood, spiritually or symbolically. Okay. Because it's about going into the underworld, which is
Into the
dealing with,
darkness.
into the depths, right? The depths of the water, the depths of, and
which is the subconscious mind as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So going into the deepest recesses of the mind, and the heart. So when we think of the winter solstice is when the sun is at its lowest point, this is about understanding the death of
Jesus
Osiris.
Christ.
Or Jesus Christ. Yeah. Well, and I'm going to get into that, because Jesus Christ is an overlap, the corruption version of this. And that's a big can of worms, but we can understand it in a simple way, and I'm going to try my best to describe that and as simple as possible. But just think of the sun. Again, think of the lower half of the zodiac as the sacred feminine womb. It's not just a tomb, it's a womb. And then I want you to think of the upper half as the sacred masculine, the light. Okay. And so what happens is there is a union when this union happens between the masculine, when the masculine seeds, because it's about sowing seeds in the autumn in hopes that they'll make it through the winter and grow in the spring. That's part of the myth, part of understanding the corn god as well, but which is Osiris. But it's a beautiful science when you really understand that the sun going into the below the autumn equinox is about the sun seeding the masculine, seeding penetrating the feminine, the
Mm-hmm.
womb, and then on the 25th is when the sun or the seed sprouts. Okay, this is the way that I'm putting it together. Okay, this is the way I'm setting it up. And I'm still finding that there might be a little conjecture with that, but that's okay because I'm what I'm trying to do is show you something very beautiful here. Whether that's conception or not, what I'm about to say is I know is definitive. I don't know. I don't quite understand the conception part, you know, where this seed was originally created. Okay. But what I do understand is when the seed sprouts, that would be the 25th of December. So the seed, so think about this too, you know, and I would say that the ancient Egyptians would consider the moment of conception is really the moment of the new, is the moment of um birth in a sense. And I'm not saying that that means like, you know, birthing out of the womb right away at conception. But what I'm saying is we have to think of the moment of conception is where this new life begins. And when you think of a seed at the bottom, you know, under the soil, the seed growing through, you know, when it sprouts and germinates and goes through the soil, this is the element of water and the element of earth. Okay. And then the seed rising is the element of fire into the element of air. And so now we're getting into you know, we're going to go over to Horus. Okay. And so this hopefully this is making sense because really this is what I'm really what I'm trying to paint a picture of is the Garden of Eden as the symbol. Okay. Something that, you know, I've never heard anybody talk about that. So that's why I'm walking this through. Okay. So now that part is very interesting to me because it makes so much sense as a full picture because it's a cycle. You know, it's about starting in the garden. You know, the whole picture is the garden. So then think about Capricorn. Capricorn is associated with time, the god, the father of time, right? Uh, you know, this is associated with Saturn,
Mm-hmm.
and this is, you know, what you and I talked about, you know, Saturn being associated with the box or
Mm-hmm.
the cube, right? And this is very important because again, here we are at the bottom of the zodiac. This is the starting point of life, right? The starting point of the seed that has sprouted. So the box would be, you know, the protection of that seed where the seed starts, you know, symbolically, and now it's starting to grow. It's starting to germinate. So this now this is all about time. You know, nature needs, you know, it performs its magic with time, not as we really understand time, but in the sense of things take time to grow, right? And things also take time to die. But also it's and that's, you know, that's our understanding of measurement of, you know, from birth to decay to death. But you know, in the more, you know, dealing with mortality especially. So then the sun, Osiris, is um this is about understanding that you know, he also embodies Isis. You know, he spiritually impregnates Isis, you know, with the new phallus, but it's about understanding that the R complex is no longer needed to rule the day. So then what happens is think about Aquarius. This is where the seed is being watered or the baby inside the belly is forming in the water, and then Pisces represents the birth canal where the moon, so Isis is the lunar goddess who is pregnant now with Horus. The sun is now birthing the sun into the above the spring equinox. That's why typically Easter, we can always know when the first full moon is, because when we know where, Easter is, or vice versa, we can always know when Easter is going to come because Easter is always the first Sunday after the first full moon. It's always been that way ever since they, started that science, is, and this is what preserves the science of um, Isis getting ready to birth the new you, or the spiritual version of self from the tomb or the womb, right? And so this is a very beautiful science stored in this myth. And, it's not like right on point, but it's right around that time, with the right around the spring equinox, because again, it's the first full moon after the spring equinox, and then you have the east star sun day that follows that first full moon phase. So this is where the hero of self arises, which is Aries, right? Aries is the arise, the arise of the sun, the arise of the second coming of the sun, because it's the second birth, the spiritual birth, right? So then what happens is you have, the bull Taurus, which is this is associated with, the sun is making its charge through the spring, through spring, it's springing up, right? So the bull, the ram. Oh yeah, and think about the ram too. The ram symbol, it actually looks like the uterus. So to arise out of the water, to break the water, right, into the air, Aries, right? So then, the Taurus charges up to Gemini, being, where we come in contact with the what's known as the Most High. So Osiris, think about this. Osiris is the spirit of the resurrection of Horus. And then Osiris is associated with each one of these aspects or elemental powers in nature. And so, and in consciousness, because it's all a reflection, it's a correspondence. And so Osiris, now this is a really important part to pay attention to, because the summer solstice is Osiris and Ra, okay, or ray of light, ray of the sun, raised, growth, fully raised. And so there is an actual name for Osiris connected with this nature elemental power, which is Ra. So he's called Os Ra. So Os Ra means the power of Ra. So Osiris is the power of Ra. And this is a very beautiful science that, if we understand it spiritually, this is truly about being in alignment with the sun, not worshiping the sun, because that is the beginning of the corruption of the solar mythos, which, I would say happened maybe 50 to 70,000 years ago. So this is where this whole mythos starts to take a turn for the worst, because what happens when you venerate in the day sky and worship in the day sky the sun, especially in the north hemisphere, which is the masculine brain correspondence, now you have an overly material mindset. That's why most people who claim to be, part of these Abrahamic religions, they truly are not spiritual people. They might have a little bit of essence of spirituality, but they are more materialist than they are spiritual. And that is because of this corruption in the high priest class of Ra, with venerating Ra
Mm.
as worshiping Ra. That's why Ra is always associated with Most High. And when we put Ra as Most High, or the sun as Most High, without understanding the spiritual lesson, the moral lesson of this whole mystery, then that is where we become corrupt. And that is something that has happened over this long period of time. We've lost our way in the, our spiritual way home. And that is why the re-emergence of this science is so important, because it's about restoring that back into ourselves, so we don't live with this what you would say, this Abrahamic mind virus,
Hmm.
because it's about keeping the mind venerating and worshiping the solar deity, the solar disk.
Hmm.
And it's understandable why people do, because the sun it's warm, the sun is light, the sun is nourishing, the sun it's reviving. And so, common sense would say, well, why wouldn't you venerate that? But the thing is that
It's
that is what
Luciferianism.
turns it keeps materialism on top, you see?
Yeah.
And that is no. We need to flip it, because spirit should be on top. And that's what this science is helping us understand, because Ra is the spirit raised. Ra is the
Mm.
embodiment of the spirit that raises from the lower casket self,
Mm.
the lower tomb, because it's about fire in the middle. It's about heart. That's why the pyramid is the pi ra
Pyramidal.
mid.
Mm. Yeah.
It's the fire in the middle. And that's also, this is about understanding that Osiris is he's pyramidal. The science of Osiris is pyramidal. That means that, and I'm going to get into this a little later, but he is the 5. Okay. And that's so crucial to understanding that the fire in the middle. So when you understand the X as a two-dimensional symbol, when that's 5 points. So the 5th point is in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But when you understand the X as a pyramid, it is the middle point raised. And that is the fire in the middle. That is the spirit raised.
The volcano, the Vulcan.
That's right.
Volcano.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. It's tied in with that mythos.
Mhm.
Yes.
Amazing stuff so far, dude. This is just so on point, so powerful. I hope everyone is enjoying this as much as I am. If you are, don't forget to drop a like below. It just takes a second. So I have a couple of questions for you before we move on. First, I wanted to touch on, you were talking about the materialist mindset of the Abrahamic kind of distortion, which at first it was like, a lot of Christians seem kind of anti-materialistic in terms of, oh, I don't care about money. It's all about helping the poor, and it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man into heaven, and this sort of thing. But that's not the only idea of materialism. It's also literalism. That is the antithetical mindset to animism, which is holistic connection, pluralism. And so that is the key to understanding the absolute polar extreme difference in these is biblical interpretations is almost always a literal translation. Even a story like this, it would be these are factual events that happened historically. This is why the Bible is so touted as this historical document, and that is a big aspect of people's insistence that it's real, that it's the infallible word of God and this and that, because it's so historically accurate. So then, rather than taking all these myths that are interwoven throughout that tapestry, taking it totally literal as if it's just other historical accounts of things that happened. That is the materialist mindset. It is completely lacking the pagan mindset of allegory and mythology. That is so crucial to activating true spirituality. And it makes sense why, this is why I say it's a mind control program, because it's like a proxy for that. It's a false substitute that's plugged into your God hole in your mind and twists your thinking into that materialistic, literalist viewpoint.
Absolutely. Yeah, very well said. And you are spot on. The way that I understand this is that when you are in materialism and you are, again, these people believe that they are spiritual because they believe in a higher power. They believe in God. Belief in God comes with all kinds of dogma, because it means that you don't care enough to know your creator. And these people just believe whatever they're fed. And this is what leads to socialism, man's law, because it means that, man is the only the authority who can essentially tell you what to believe, about your own creator or about the creator. And this is why the church is so adamant about keeping their power, because they know that people are very dogmatic in their belief systems, and that they will just, believe anything which resides in materialism. You might, again, I'm not saying that you're a full on materialist if you believe in God, because I mean, that to believe in God means at least you have some idea that, or some kind of
capacity
feeling that there is something more or bigger than you. But to not question the authority
the
who
dogma
told you about God, and to not go further into your research to understand with your own personal relationship, because you've actually went and searched for truth. You've actually sought it out for yourself. That is the true spiritual journey, not believing someone else, just because they have this big church and they're well known, and everybody just believes what they say, and it's just this go along to get along thing. And also, even in the Bible, it says that I can't remember what verse it is, but it's I think it's Romans of all places in the Bible. Romans talks about God says obey government,
Romans
right?
13.
Yeah, okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So you know about it, and that's people look at the Bible as the truth, and therefore they accept what they hear in that, and but that really opens up the door for control, aka socialism.
Hmm.
And it is, just a complete virus, material virus. And I'm not saying material's bad. There's nothing wrong with material. It's the mindset of materialism being above. This is the ego above the
It's
spirit.
it's a aspect of satanic mindset, basically.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Because when materialism is, it's like the star, right? When the star is pointing upward, right? Where the middle point is, in the middle pointing up, that represents
Spirit,
spirituality on top of materialism.
the fifth element.
Yeah, that's right. And when the spirit is down below, this means quintessence is in the flames, or it's not even on. It's not even activated. You have the 2 points, the inversion of the 2 points of the star are pointing up. That is the horns. That is the dualism of Set. You
Wow.
see?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that being said, most of the people who don't question the authority of what they're being taught in anything. It doesn't have to just be the Bible, just in life in general. You're going to reside in materialism because it means that you believe in authority, which is socialism, which is materialism, which is coming from an overly dominant left brain, because the left brain is dealing with government, it's dealing with, the R complex as the executor of
Hmm.
the whole brain. It's Osiris as the god of the living.
Mm.
That's what that is.
Control and domination.
Yeah, so that means there's, you have to go down into the underworld to find your soul, to find your spirit, to raise your spirit, to raise the ka. Okay, the ka is the spirit. This is the ancient Egyptian science of spirit raising, is the ka coming out of the ka fin, right? To raise that spirit, is, and what you talk about with animism, it's the same thing, because to raise that spirit means to see spirit in everything.
Mm.
And so this I
Mm.
mean, it's such a huge,
Yeah,
huge
because
topic.
the materialism, it sees everything as dead, as mechanistic, right? The universe is just this dead mechanistic clock machine thing, and not
Right.
seeing the divinity and the life force, the God and everything, with it, including yourself.
Yes,
Man,
absolutely.
very, very
And
profound.
yeah, and think about this. The the belief in, I mean, this is one of the saddest things that it really gets to me when I hear this belief in the afterlife.
Mm.
Okay? And obviously there's a spiritual essence to the afterlife, especially because Osiris is the god of the afterlife. Okay? And so that means that, are you going to be spiritually raised after your first life, being your material self, right?
Mhm.
So that so the belief that people hold even for their whole life, they're waiting, just waiting, everything's determined, just waiting for the afterlife, just waiting till I die, in my mortal being,
Mm.
and
Man,
just accept that.
that's another thing, because I was raised Christian and particularly puritanical. there's certain aspects within Christianity, and predestination is a big kind of uh, dividing thing amongst Christian doctrine of whether or not. And my parents were very much in the predestination camp, and so it's pretty wild how I was actually raised almost being taught that free will doesn't exist by implication. They didn't come out and say that, but they're saying, oh yes, everything is predetermined because it's all part of God's plan. God knows everything that's going to happen. He's already written history out. And so it's like, well, what the fuck does he even need us for? What are we even doing? And what is, what's the point of all of this? Not that I even had the capacity to ask those questions at the time, but it's a fucking mystery and a miracle that I managed to get to where I am now with my consciousness and my philosophy intact, when that was what I was taught from a young age. But yes, this is so eye-opening and really like mind-blowing, because again, on its face, Christianity doesn't seem that materialistic, but there are these very important pillars of materialism that are baked and embedded down below the theology of it. And this is one of those: is predestination. Everything's predetermined. Free will doesn't exist. The Darwinist and the atheist will tell you the same exact thing, even though these people think they're polar extremes and completely opposite. It's like, are you though? Really? Interesting. It's a dialectic.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you brought up atheists, because atheism tends to be this idea that, just live your life and, basically in hedonism, which they don't even understand that word.
Oh, and life has the meaning you give it. There's no intrinsic meaning to it other than what we, the gods of ego and the material realm, assign to it.
Right. No purpose at all. And that's because they never have even stepped foot in their own temple to find purpose at all. And it's
real safe.
Yeah. But it's insane just to think that you and I could have been that duped, to basically buy into one of those dialectics. And here we are being able to talk about this and show how each one of these ways of being is dogmatic, and it's what remains, it's what maintains materialism. And materialism is what maintains
the slave
socialism.
Fucking system.
Yeah.
Yes. Dude, so fucking powerful right there.
So this science is, it is so important that we, what we're doing right now, we're preserving this information. And this is, so I'm so thankful for the other men and women who have sacrificed everything to preserve this knowledge for us to even have a chance. Because without them, and that's why we do this, for the labor of love, because that's the only thing that is generating as a result. This is the natural law expression of love. This whole tracing board is natural law. It's a moral lesson, because it's about learning that you cannot understand truly right and wrong without understanding light and dark. You cannot be online and be raised to, obviously people, I really don't like this idea that, people just automatically know the difference between right and wrong. But in a sense, I would say, yes, it is written on your heart. But the thing is that we're not conscious of it. We have been systematically and even epigenetically, just put through a grinder into this material mindset, to where I mean, it's just amazing how many people are social Darwinists or moral subjectivists, people who just do not buy into the idea that there really is a difference between right and wrong. So there is, and looking at this this whole picture, this is what's helping us understand that at a very deep level. It's an unfoldment of natural law. That's all it is. Because it's about raising to be a moral being, to be upright, to be correct in your behavior. And we're going to get into that.
Erect and correct.
Yeah, acting correct.
It's just so epic, dude.
Stand correct, right? Upright.
Because here's another thing. Natural law is a process.
Right.
It's not just this static thing. There's an aspect of it because it's universal and it's all encompassing and applicable. But I don't know how else to explain it, but it's a process. It's like the alchemical process. There's no escaping the procedural aspect of it. Yes. Of just like, oh, everything stays the same all the time. And it's like, it meets you where you're at.
Yes.
And there's a time and a place for everything, just like the seasons. This is animism. You can't think that you're separate from that or that you're going to get around that or mitigate that in any kind of way because it is you and you are it. Yes. Any belief that you're something else from that is just a mind virus. It's a distortion and it's a mental schism from nature. I mean, everything comes back to this one thing. That's why I've become more and more about animism, even because it's like, it doesn't negate natural law. It doesn't supersede. It's like, it incorporates natural law, but from a more holistic and just, it's like the entire framework for everything to fit into together.
Right.
So yeah, just the process is undeniable because that is what spirituality is the process of becoming, just like the present moment is ever becoming. The verdandi in the web of weird. It's an unfoldment, like you said yourself. Man, what's such a great word, unfoldment. Because it's a fractal. It's the fractal nature of the conscious universe that's just spiraling out into infinity, man.
Yeah, spiraling in. Yeah.
Dude.
I'm glad that you brought that up.
I'm not even stoned, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you don't want to be stoned, right?
Yeah.
You want to be high, right?
What were you going to say about spiraling?
Well, I'm glad that you brought up spiraling, because to spiral in control, or to aspire to go to the light, see, in the middle of the crosshairs.
The pyramidal.
Right. That's right. Pyramid. So it's about understanding that fire in the middle. It's about understanding that the heart is in the middle. It's central. It's in the chest.
It's the I. It's the I.
Yes. Yes.
The I go.
Right. Yeah, the I go. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that. That's good. That's hilarious. So, yeah,
good stuff.
What you're essentially trying to do is work your way to the light, the middle, right? And so that is why Osiris is the original as far as the sun on the crux. But this what comes before this is the X. And I'm going to get into a little bit into that a little bit later, but it's about understanding that this is a spiritual science. And then, of course, what happens is these material religions come along and they start to literalize things. That's why people have all these crazy literal beliefs and things
Mm-hmm.
that just like have no validity at all. Like they just don't, it doesn't take any critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Source. You
the source.
source.
Yes, source. Yeah, exactly. The source is in the underworld, dude. You got to go there.
Yeah. The
Um,
source is at the source.
yeah, it's at the source, right? Um, but this is the circled dot. That's why I
I
wore
knew that
this.
wasn't an accident, man.
Yeah, and when you understand this is about the lower and the higher, the the southern and the northern. Okay, it's to this symbol helps us maintain orientation. And it's a very simple way to do that. So, think about, South Pole, North Pole, right? But obviously it's one pole through, but this is a two-dimensional symbol. And I really break this down in my Earth Brain sacred the sacred trace presentation, Earth Brain 2. But this is really, really deep science of this solar mythos. So Osiris is mostly known in the solar mythos. And here's another thing that I just want to be very clear on is that we're taught that Osiris was, this god that came from Egypt, within, 6,000 years ago. And as I'm sure this number of years is to keep you in a box. Okay? It's to keep you in a freaking cage of such a small mind of thinking bigger, because there is so much more to this world than 6,000 years. They make us think that creation started somewhere around, that time. I mean, it's just these ideas are just insane that people buy into this stuff. But if we keep an open mind and we, really stay true to the science of archaeology, the science of, um, you know, uh, understanding that human beings have been around for a very long time, way longer than what we've ever been taught. I mean, there's just too much evidence that is has surfaced for us to stay in this little 6,000 year box. So when we're talking about the cult of Osiris or the ritual of Osiris or the myth of Osiris, this science goes, I mean, it's we're going to get into this, but it's timeless. But also at the same time, it was developed in the past, I would say, the past 100 to 150,000 years, but it goes back a lot further than that. But I'm stating big numbers, and I know that's scary for a lot of people, but if you pay attention to the tool making and you pay attention to the Paleolithic era or the Neolithic era, where where there was stone tools being developed during this time, this indicates that there was intelligent human beings, but maybe they weren't, fully, developed yet. But what it does show us is that they definitely understood tool making. And this is a whole big can of worms that I'm opening up, but I just want to make it clear how far back this science goes. But
Mm.
it's see, the science is already here. Where we discovered it, and then we turned it into these stories, these myths, in order to preserve the knowledge of the actual science in nature. That's all it is. And how we are connected to that. And why we must not allow this materialism to continue. But obviously it starts with you, the individual. You have to be the one to make that change. You have to be the one to be brave enough to go into the underworld and face that dark side of the self, to really see this bigger picture. But the point is that this science has evolved, and there used to, it started off as the stellar mythos and then evolved, and that was sometime, I believe, sometime between or sometime around 300,000 years ago, and then it evolves into the solar mythos, and then, or I'm sorry, into the lunar mythos dealing with the moon, and then that lasts somewhere between 40 to 60,000 years, and then comes the solar mythos, which has lasted somewhere between 100 to 150,000 years. And so there's a perfection of this mythology. There's, the high priest class, the spiritual beings of this world preserve this information. So, through love and through care, through, through real, not being lazy, not being apathetic, which is the world we kind of live in now, really. They were the ones that understood how important this knowledge was. And they also, and I'm not going to get into it on here, but they preserved a way to help us remember, if we are people who understand geometry, sacred geometry, they knew that anybody who was in the mysteries and conscious of the sacred geometry could find the answer to why the pyramids were built. And, as a protection mechanism to keep us from going into materialism. So that's a whole nother big story. And, I don't have time to, really break that down, but it's just important to understand that this information has got to be preserved. It has to be taken serious because it is the thing. It's a mechanism. It's a tool that can help reflect ourselves so we can raise ourselves and not be, entrenched in this, material-based mindset. So there's so much more to that, but I really just want to stress that. And also, I know I went a little bit all over the place, but I really wanted to just make sure that is out there, because we if we truly want to understand ourselves, we're going to have to open ourselves up out of that 6,000 year box that everybody is stuck in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. Again, orientation. It's not
right.
just about the physical or the spatial, but the temporal as well.
Yeah. Temporal. Yeah. The temporal means time. So it's about constructing our temple, and the father god or Saturn, god of time, that's what that's about. Is like, we only have so much time to figure this out and to learn our own temple, build our own temple, or discover it, however you want to look at that. So it is about being a temple builder. That's essentially what an esoteric mason is.
A mason, yes, exactly. Working with the stone.
Right. Stone builders, right.
Stone temple pilots.
Yep. I know, right? Another rabbit hole right there.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just want to take a quick moment to offer you a special gift. It's the free initiation package download. This is a free download package that includes the Toolbox mini course. I created this package to equip you with all of the essential tools you need for any type of energetic or magical practice for anyone serious about their spiritual development. It's comprised of 3 parts: the circle, the breath, and the voice, where you'll learn how to cast the Circle of the Magi, various breathwork techniques, including a powerful guided breathwork meditation, rune galler, and more. You'll also get access to the Inner Sanctum, our private Facebook group and Discord server, as well as some Wizard Factory wallpapers for desktop and mobile, all for free. And for those who've already seen this course, I'm happy to announce that this is a brand new remake with better production and even more information. You can find the link to get yours in the description below. So check it out and let's get back to the content.
But we can let's go to the next slide.
Excellent.
This, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, but it is very vital to understand. So what you're looking at here is the brothers of Set and Osiris. And of course, you could also add in Isis to this picture because you're dealing with the lunar. But I wanted to really focus on Set and Osiris. So Osiris, I told you earlier that the waning, so the top part of this chart from the full moon that you see all the way on the right being Osiris, the full light, the full moon. This is about understanding the waning angles on the arch going over to Set. This is about going from light to dark. This is about Osiris being cut up into 14 pieces, half of a lunar cycle, which is roughly 28 days. So this is just a very, and I wanted to, show this idea, show this image so people really get it in their heads why, the lunar is associated with Osiris because it's about the light. The light. Osiris is the light. And, so we have Isis being the moon who receives the light. Hence, that's why they connect, they merge, they marry. And also, think about this. This is very interesting too, is that when you look up the etymology of Isis, her name is Set. So she is also the power of Set, because Aus means power of. Just like Ra is Osiris, power of Ra. So we have to understand that Isis is the sacred feminine part of darkness. And so she off balances, she offsets Set because Set is also dealing with the dark. And they're both receivers of the dark. Set receives his brother to put him in a box. Isis receives her husband as a form of marriage or wedding. So it's a very powerful science. And then, when you think about the resurrection of Osiris as the lunar god, the god, because this is all a lunar science. And this is definitely part of the lunar science, the ancient lunar science. It's not just the science that we find in this mythos. It's a science that has been preserved through the solar mythos. So now we understand the waning angles are light going to dark. And then the waxing angles are from the new moon being, the place of Set. Then the light starts to, the pieces have been found by Isis that you see on the bottom. That's the waxing angles. So each piece is found except for the the 14th piece.
The
So
dingus.
I was waiting for your joke. I knew you had one. So it's the rising of that moon. It's the rising of this, you could call it the phallus,
We've talked
even though,
about the word rays being raw Isis, raw Isis.
oh yes, right, right. Raw Isis, yes. Because it's about going from
She likes it
the
raw, dog.
yeah, she is the reason for that raising. She is the reason. She's the care that rises that up,
the
that
reason
fire up.
the reason for
Their
the season.
reason for the season. Yeah. Yeah, it's right in there.
Nice.
Um yeah,
Nicest.
yeah, and right in the center you see that his phallus is missing. He's cut up and the phallus is not there.
Hmm.
So the this is also part of understanding the idea behind
Mm.
the brother that is jealous, the jealous brother that does horrible things to his brother who is actually raised. So
I'm kind of wondering if you have any thoughts about the idea that maybe part of this whole transgender agenda and the removal of the phallus could be some sort of sick, twisted Osiris ritual on a mass scale.
Absolutely,
because it's the dead self, the unintegrated, the dismembered self being raised as some sort of virtue or veneration of bravery and all the crap that they say
yeah,
about that.
it's taken place in the dark, and it's taken place in materialism, because we have to remember that this is darkness. So this is the realm of ignorance as well, because we have to understand that that's what it represents. Darkness isn't just the sacred feminine, it's also ignorance, and it is a degradation of this ritual that's taken place to cut off your genitals or to mutilate your genitals is a corruption of the Osiris ritual.
Hmm.
It's a complete corruption of that, because it's the thing that is being sold everywhere. This is, it's absolutely part of this whole thing. I mean, once you awaken to this whole science, you see it everywhere. I mean, it's all through movies. It's all through the media and the way that things are done. Anytime you hear about dismemberment, it's not just think about this. The phallus is associated with the head. It's the little head, right? But it also is part of understanding dismemberment of the head, period. The actual head off the shoulders. So, and also dismemberment is just the body being cut up into multiple pieces. So this is a multiple science of the archetype or of this myth, because we have to understand that getting your head chopped off means getting your head, your mind, and your brain chopped off, right? And therefore you can't raise. How are you going to raise your little head up? But it's also understanding the phallus is the being chopped off is part of understanding that raising power of fertility, that raising power
Right.
of keeping life going, right? So
it represents materialism yet again as well,
yes,
because you've
yes,
removed the head, you're putting all the emphasis on the body. the
Right.
material vessel.
Right.
Mm.
So this is very, very important science because really the moon is very important to understanding the underworld and understanding that this is where the light of the sun meets the moon, the sacred feminine. It's the receiver of light, just like Mother
Mm.
Earth. It's a receiver of light, and therefore, to understand the think about this too. This is very controversial, but when you think of Lucifer, Lucifer is the light bringer,
Mm-hmm.
Lux Fere, the light bringer. And obviously, this is always associated with, evil. And that's you do have to understand it in the context. But when you think about the moon as the light bringer, it is true because the moon is receptive of light and it reflects to the underworld or to the dark. It is the sun, the moon is catching that light and bringing it into the underworld, the place where the sun is not, present, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It's a reflection. So we have to understand it that way, also, because a lot of people just associate, Lucifer as, some evil being associated with, this fallen angel and, being associated with Venus, which, all you have to understand it that way too. But I'm saying, there is another way to understand this because it also makes sense when you really put it into this context. So again, it's a controversial thing, but I just wanted to make mention of it because I think it does deserve attention.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, the moon represents the mind in astrology and other traditions. This is why it has the same root word. Mind, man, and moon are all essentially the same. That they can be represented by the rune Manaz. That's got the word Mon Oz, and that represents humanity. And so,
right,
yeah, understanding the mind and the light reflecting the sun, the soul, the truth is to be an illuminated being, but also being aware of the dark side of the moon, that which you cannot see, your subconscious and unconscious mind.
right,
That's
right,
the underworld of the mind, and interestingly enough.
right. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's it, and to, the mind to receive the light, and that is what the moon is. And God, there's so much that goes into that, and it's very, very important that we understand it that way. Um, but yeah, I mean, Typhon, I'll think about this. Typhon, right? Set is Typhon. Typhon is Set. Typhon is the the word typhon comes from typhoon.
Who's thinking that?
So typhoon is on the western side of the Pacific Ocean, right? So this is so if you could think of a typhoon as a storm, because that's what it is, the storm is a vortex that swallows the sun in the west, right? So typhon is this you could look at as the storm that swallows the sun as the sun sets.
Hmm.
And it's powerful information when you really see it this way. But we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide unless you had something else you wanted to add to this.
No, this is great.
So this is a very advanced science. And I just want to really let people know that I highly recommend that if you don't understand the triune brain, the science of the triune brain, I, after hearing this, I definitely would go study that because it's one of the most amazing sciences that any human being could ever study because
Hmm.
it really develops the mind to understand the Holy Trinity or the trivium. The trivium, this is the trivium, what we're looking at.
Hmm.
So this is the Khemetian Trinity, or the Khemetian. The correct pronunciation is Khemetian, but a lot of people don't know that. What is Kemet? Kemet is the older name for Egypt. So
Which
this is the
means the black place, basically, right? Because Kim was the Egyptian word for black.
right, the Black Land.
Black land,
So
yeah.
yeah, and this is part of
The rich
understanding.
soil, I believe. The
Yeah, the
fertile.
rich black soil of Egypt, right?
Hmm.
And this is part of understanding alchemy. So this is where alchemy comes from because it's about starting in the black, right? Starting in the dark, starting in the sacred feminine. So, but this is about understanding the what I just shared with you with um the uh the zodiac with the dark area of the lower half of the zodiac. It's about starting there in the dark and then working your way into light because it's a spiritual science. So the Khemetian Trinity, well, one thing that I also want to make mention here is, this is also dealing with this can also be understood with Hiram Abiff being the widow's son. So, and maybe I'll explain that a little bit as I go through this, but this is about understanding that Osiris is the R complex. This is one of the most beautiful sciences that anybody could ever understand and really recognize or awaken to is this idea or I'm sorry, science of the archetype, the the um the symbol of Osiris and what he's associated with is understanding the R complex. So the R complex is the lower stem of the brain. And then above that in the middle is the limbic system or the mammalian brain, and this is associated with Isis. And then you have Horus as the divine child amongst the two. So I'm going to keep going in counterclockwise as I go through this type of information. So we're going to go back down to Osiris. So Osiris is the creator god. Okay, he's known as the creator god and he is God the Father. So when we think of, this is another beautiful thing to awaken to is when we're trying to make sense of this divine, you know, when we associate the circle, let's just say the circle it's the divine, right? It represents the creator, it represents perfection, it represents the all-knowing, omniscient, omnipresent.
Just the
It
all.
represents the all, the truth, everything, right? And therefore, when we we as human beings can't just arrive at the circle and just understand what that means.
Mhm.
We have to understand that circle in parts. And that's kind of the point of the zodiac is we have to understand it in pieces. And that's another point of Osiris being cut up in pieces is about understanding each piece to understand the whole.
Mhm.
So Osiris is the
Hole. Hole.
yeah. Osiris, yeah. Osiris is the creator, God, Father, God the Father. So Isis, you could look at her as God or God, goddess the mother. And then, Horus, the God, the divine child, right? And this is just to help us understand this holy trinity, this even a parental bond between, think about this in the physical world, your father is the input, right? Your mother is the processor of that input. So, your father inputs information, his information into the mother receives that information, process it, and then there begins to build a child physically in the physical world. This is the physical bond, parental bond of mother, father, and child. And when we understand it that way, I think it can help us understand this spiritual part, which is Osiris, the father, the creator, and this is dealing with thoughts and mind. And so when we think of the principle of mentalism, this is where thoughts begin, or this is where thoughts begin, but this is where we have the ability to process thoughts and then eventually act on those thoughts and manifest the things that we say we want or the things that we need. So this is about understanding that the thoughts first come to the R complex and then they are received by the limbic system, by the goddess Isis, the divine mother. This is dealing with emotions. This is dealing with care. This is dealing with spirit. So if the thoughts that come to us, or the thoughts that we develop and put through this process of emotions, then what happens is we can develop right action, or Horus, because the thing is that Osiris and Isis are the sacred masculine and sacred feminine coming together in union in a wedding. So Isis is the wife, Osiris is the husband. This is a wedding. So where do they wed at? They wed at the right angle. Okay. And I completely neglected to talk about, this symbol, but I'm gonna get to that. I should have talked about it before I started this science, but that's okay. So I'm gonna go in reverse. So Isis is the goddess, the spirit, the emotions that receives thoughts. And so if the thoughts and emotions are in alignment with each other, then what they produce is the body of spirit. Okay? Because it's about the body having a raised, harmonious, united mother and father, sacred feminine, sacred masculine, that come together in order to create this hypotenuse angle that you see, which is Horus, the outcome, or the action. Okay, the right action. So this is the savior of self, to be raised. And so this means when Horus becomes the savior, that means that Osiris is no longer the god of the living. He is the god of the dead. So that means that the R complex is no longer controlling this, the neocortex, which is Horus. And think about this, he's bird headed. Your neocortex is your two wings, or your two hemispheres of your brain. And this is part of understanding the language of the birds, because the language of the birds is about being activated in the neocortex, where the R complex is in union as the left brain, and the mammalian brain is, you know, largely controlling the right brain, and then both hemispheres are in union with each other. There's hearts that just came out. That's so funny.
Hmm.
They're in union, they're in love. That's hilarious. So if we really think about it, whatever you know, whatever man has created in this world first had to start in the mind, right? And so the thoughts are, this is about being the creator aspect of a human being. And then this is when it's unified, when you're going down into the underworld, what you're doing is you're finding your care, Isis, right? Isis is about finding the care, finding your care, because it's about putting those pieces back together. It's about caring for Osiris, meaning, symbolically, what that means is, you know, caring for the your relationship with the creator, therefore your relationship with all things, your relationship again with the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, the earth, the elemental powers. It's about it's about loving yourself and having your thoughts and your emotions in alignment, your heart and your mind in alignment, because the limbic system is largely dealing with the heart, the care.
Mhm.
So when those two are in alignment, you produce the hero of yourself, which means sovereignty, which means moving in the direction of freedom.
I wanted to share this as well. I think this is a really cool symbolism that depicts this as a totally different angle, but this is the Mexican flag. There's the bird, and what does he have in his mouth? The serpent. That's
Right.
the R complex.
Right.
He's the king. He's being dominant over the lower self, the ego.
Absolutely, man. Very astute.
Hell
That's
yeah.
amazing. Good call on that. Absolutely. You're right on with that. So what I was going to tell you guys in the beginning is that this is the what you see with these squares. Okay, why are we looking at these squares? So you have three squares and they are all different sizes. Okay, and this is dealing with what's known as Euclid's 47th proposition, or it's also the Pythagorean theorem. And this is dealing with the science of 3, 4, 5. Also, what's known as the Egyptian string trick, which is where you really find the beauty of this science. So, one thing I also want to make mention of here is that Osiris really is all of these aspects. Osiris is Isis. Osiris is Horus.
Hmm.
When we really understand what Osiris represents, because Osiris, it's life. Osiris is symbolic of life, period. So the circle of life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is very important to the 3-4-5 ratio in the ancient Egyptian string trick, because it is the 12 knots
I was
of a
totally
string.
waiting
Yeah.
to say that. Yeah.
And I'm not going to reveal that on here, but I am going to say that it will magically and beautifully help you find the right angle.
Mm-hmm. The correct angle.
Yes, which is Ma'at. Ma'at is the Ma'at means that which is straight. And so in order to, if you want to build in this world,
Mm-hmm.
morally, you build in a straight line, because that means you are erect in your emotions, you're erect in your behavior.
Right. Alignment.
Alignment.
You can't
Right.
build a building if everything's cut at funky angles, nothing matches up together. That is symbolic of internal confusion and discord.
Right. And this is where the Masonic square comes from, because it's about the
The cornerstone.
the cornerstone, the vertical and the horizontal coming together in a perpendicular. So that is about building from a level, building on the level.
So you can level up.
Can you see how you can level up? That's right. And
Yeah.
because
What level are you on? You know?
yeah, you don't want to level down. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Mm-hmm. Or you'll just get leveled
That's
by
right.
natural
Yeah.
law.
Yeah. Get leveled 6 feet under.
Yeah.
So this is a very, very beautiful science that it has its driver as Osiris, because it's about mentalism. Mentalism is where this begins. It begins in the mind. And so,
Mentalism is magic.
yes.
The
Yes, it is.
it is your magic.
Yeah, that's right.
I Magic Nation.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
The imagine at ion,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's all
And
it's a
the triune is tri-unity. The 3 in
right.
1.
That's
Triality.
right. That's right. The 3 in 1, the 3 in 1 brain. I mean, it's everything. It's the Holy Trinity, the Khemetian Trinity, the familial, Trinity, it's all about understanding that knowledge is going to unlock all of this, which is dealing with the trivium. So it is, I mean, it's all about becoming a free being. That's what the liberal arts are. That's what that translates to, is of a free man. So
Mm.
the more that so when you learn that science and then you take it further, like you see here with this Khemetian Trinity, it only unlocks more and more and more and more, because it's all about the sacred feminine and sacred masculine coming together in unison, which is equilibrium, which produces the savior in you.
I got something. What do you've probably surely thought of this before, but maybe someone listening haven't. But so right here, could this be Morpheus, the God Father, the paternal, right? The thoughts, the mind, the leader.
Yes. Yep.
Could this be Trinity, the divine feminine, emotions, etc., and then Neo, the savior of humanity?
Yep, you
For
got
right
it.
action.
You got it. Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. It's funny, when you were talking about that, I was just also thinking that, so I went bowling the other day, and I actually talked about this on my last show, but I want to share it here too. Is that, what do you see when you're looking at these gods, these nature gods? What do you see on their heads dealing with bowling?
Bowling. Oh, bowling pins.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is really interesting. So I went bowling the other day, and then I um I just began bowling, and I looked at those pins, and it was something I thought about a long time ago, but I didn't really realize how much was associated with that game with Osiris.
Mm.
Because think about this.
You got the triangle,
The
the
tetractys. Yes, the triangle, which is
the
made of,
pyramid.
yeah, and it's made of 10 points. So this is part of understanding, this is something that supposedly Pythagoras invented or discovered, right? Which is the 10 points that create the tetractys, which is 4 rows that have these 10 points. And that's what the bowling pins are. The 10 in this case would be Osiris as a whole triangle, right? And so you're bowling with a ball,
Mm-hmm.
bail, right? Ball, you're rolling it down, right? You can look at it, the sun going down, and then it's Osiris being broken up or you know,
Dismembered.
dismembered, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens when you hit all the pins down? What's the symbol that you get?
The strike.
Right?
It's the X.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
Yes. And I'm going to get into that on the next slide, but it's like you just think about the fact that when you're bowling, you're also, it's not just you're dismembering him symbolically or ritualistically in the game with all the pieces, but you're also, it's his head. So you're dismembering him in 2 different ways, right? So, I mean, I haven't really thought it completely through. There might be a lot more symbolism to that, but I will say this. This is the part that I think, and this will be a good segue into the next slide, which is that the 10 pens is something, so when you hit 10 pens, you get an X. And the Roman numeral
It's 10.
is 10. So what you're seeing constantly is your subconscious mind is always associating X with 10. So it's a corruption. But I'm not saying that there isn't any beautiful science or important science in that. But what I'm saying is, we can go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll explain this a little further. So 10 is, we have to think of in terms of, it was around 2,500 years ago when the calendar read 355 days. So
Mm-hmm.
this, I associate this with 10 extra days that they did not account for. So the 10 extra days are what's called epigomenal days. So this just means days out of time. And I'm going to explain that a little further too. But the Roman calendar at one point did have 10 extra days. So 355 days. And then there's 365 days in a year. So they did not account for those 10 extra days. And this is so important when trying to understand the overlap of the corrupted solar mythos over Osiris in the, I would say, the perfected solar part of the mythos. And so we have to understand that the days out of time, when it comes to the year, there are 365 days in a year, but it's a cycle, and a cycle is symbolically a circle. So a circle is 360 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore the ancients knew that there had to be a way to account for those 5 extra days. And this is so important to understand, because this is what helps us go further back into the ancient mythos being lunar and stellar prior to the solar, but also into the solar. But the point is those 5 extra days are also they're called the 5 holy days, or the days out of time, or they have also been called the unlucky days. And there's a big, ugly reason for that. So, and I'm going to get into that. So, this 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 symbol, this X, is basically a square. In order to find the point in a square, you have to make an X to find that middle point. And that's very, very key to understand, because that's about understanding the pyramidal. Okay. The bird's eye view of the pyramid. So this is where this knowledge is stored, essentially. But the point is that in order to make up for those 5 extra days, they did 4 points, and then the middle being Osiris. Okay, this is the X. This is where the lines cross and they meet in the middle. And so this is very, very important when it becomes, and I'm gonna get into more of the science behind that. But it's important to understand the when this gets corrupted in the solar mythos and becomes a Roman numeral of 10, this is what they call the 10 days out of time. They're not calling that. I'm calling that because it's 355 days, and then it's 355 of a 365 days year cycle, and then you have the 10 extra days. But the problem with that is 10 is a higher number. It's further away from source. 10 is further away from source because we always associate source with 0 or 1, right? The 1,
or the all.
or the circle is the all, right? And so it's about understanding that, 10 is a corruption of the X. And I'm not saying that there can't be any good science that is stored within that X, but we have to understand that the X itself, the 5 points, is the pure form. The 5 associated with the X is the pure form, because why? There is 4 points on the outside, and then they cross and intersect at the 5th point, right? So this is the pure form. The 5 and the X they go together. And this is so key to understanding the overlap of especially the Christian doctrine of Christ, because this is dealing with Rome. This is Roman. It's a Roman numeral. It is this is part of understanding the Chiru symbol, which is, Chirho, the Chiru.
Cairo, like the Egyptian city, Cairo.
Yes, you nailed it, man. Nailed it. Nailed it. Because it's about understanding that the science was pure at one point, but then there comes this corruption and this overlap. So it's about taking the 5 into the 10, and it's about covering that 5 up, because it's about power. It's about having that power over nature.
Occulting,
right. It's right in front of us, but we have to have the eyes to see. We have to have the research to understand. Yeah, they're perfect. Yeah, this is the bird's eye view of the pyramid. And I believe this is the Great Pyramid, which is the northern pyramid. Very powerful symbol, very powerful tomb, right? These are tombs, but they're tombs that preserve the knowledge of the numbers, the numerology that is associated with Osiris and Horus and Isis and Set, and you know, the list goes on, but especially those nature elemental powers.
Mm-hmm.
So this is about the 5 with the middle point raised. That's what the pyramid is. So this is very, very important because the 5 is, when we think of the, we talked about this earlier with the star with the point in the middle raised up.
Mm-hmm.
The star with the middle point up is spirit, the 5th quintessence, element, the 5th element, right?
Mm-hmm.
Spirit raised. Well, the other science of that is the pyramid. The pyramid, the point in the middle is the raised. So you have the 3-dimensional understanding of the elements, the 5 elements, which is the star pointing up, and then you have the pyramid symbol, which is the 4 points on the outside, the 4 corners being earth, air, fire, and water. And then you have the middle point, the pi ra mid, the spirit, because it's about the fire is raising the spirit up, because that's where they all come together. They all come together in the central light. That's what it's about. It's the central light, which is spirit. Spirit is central to everything. So it's, yes. Yeah, that is a very good Roman numeral symbol.
This is from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh, man.
Where he literally says X marks the spot and breaks a hole in the floor to go into where? A fucking tomb.
There you go. I mean, see?
Where the treasure is, right? X marks the spot for the treasure.
That's right. The treasure chest. Because it's about finding your care to ignite that fire of spirit up. That's what raw is. That raw power.
Raw power. Right? Hell yeah.
And that's what it's about. Not worshiping some, solar deity. That's not what it's about. Because that's what leads to materialism. It's about understanding that raw power internally.
Mm-hmm.
And so the X is a very powerful symbol. I mean, think about, and I did a whole show on this on show number 64, and I talked about it in 65 of the Cubby Hole, is when we understand, and I know Logan, how symbols can be charged, right? Mm-hmm. Look at what's happening right now in this world. Look at all the X everywhere. The X is all over the place. It's in movies. It's in, just think about this big company, X. Mm-hmm. That's basically taking over everything.
What about Triple X?
Yeah. Oh, and I talked about Triple X too.
And Dos Equis. Dos Equis.
Dos Equis. Yeah. Yeah. The double X and the Triple X. I mean, Triple X is, when it comes to alcohol, that is a high percentage of alcohol. That's typically what that's associated with. But also, Triple X is associated with porn, hardcore porn, right? And it's also associated with 666. Well, how is that? Why is that? Well, it's because X is and this is, man, I'm telling you, what I'm about to say is one of the most important things that anybody, especially who associates themselves with Satanism just as a rebellion against the church, this this XXX is the numerical value in the alphabet of the letter X, which is 24. So 24
Which is
in
6.
gematria is 6.
Mm-hmm.
It is 666.
Or sex,
Eh,
sex, sex.
Right. Sex. You absolutely. Sex, sex, sex. X is always 3 X's actually does translate to sex because it's about understanding that you're dealing with the phallus of Osiris.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sex organ.
Well, and sex means 6,
Right.
as
Yeah.
far as
Sex.
like sextuple, for example.
Right. Yeah. And so think about this. X is, it means stay out, stay
Mm-hmm.
away. Right.
Right? It's like
So
uh, uh, yeah, like you were doing this. What do you do when there's like a vampire or something?
yeah, that's right. The cross or the X, it doesn't matter
It's the
because
same
it's about,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, it's the same thing. And there's truth to that, but of course when you associate it with the religion, it becomes stigmatized. But the X is especially when it's a triple X, it's enticing. So that means it's like, oh, warning, stay out, but also don't be a pussy. Come on in, try it out. Right. So it's enticing. It pulls you in because it's like, you know, especially as a child or a teen, you're like, oh, you want to break the
That's the
rules,
good
right?
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, you want to
exactly.
get to the good stuff. You want to break the rules and do the things that you're not supposed to do. So the is enticing. That's why children and, well, teens especially get into porn and alcohol, but they also get into Satanism because it's like, oh, the XXX is the 666, and it has been stigmatized as, this is what the church wants to stay away from, right? It's a beast consciousness. Anything with the XXX is the mark of the beast and stay away, it's evil, right? There's more to it than that, though. And it's not, I mean, 666 is not evil. There's, first of all,
I've heard
um,
it represents materialism in a way because of the 6 carbon, it's the carbon atomic signature, basically. Protons, neutrons, electrons making the carbon atom, which is kind of the material. It's, the body in that.
yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I've heard of that, but um, I will definitely look into that. But the point is, though, with 666 is that it is the thing that is pushed on people to scare them, and either they go, and it's all about pushing you into a dialectic. You want to fear 666 and just have your faith in the church, or do you want to, be rebellious, because the 666 is it's a rebellious
Well,
number.
that's Satan. He was the one that defied the Christian
That's
God.
right. Right. And so, but it's interesting because it creates this, polarized dialectic. But if you look at it very closely, it is the XXX bird's eye view of the 3 great pyramids of Giza.
Mm.
So it's about being raised because you did enough homework to understand what you're really looking at and what's really being said to you through these symbols.
Through bird consciousness.
Yes.
Which, again, if anyone is watching that hasn't watched our previous segment on this podcast, it's called The Language of the Birds, or isn't it? Or bird language? Green
Uh,
language. Green language, and we get into the language of the birds in that, but it's called Green Language. Definitely check that one out. One of my favorite episodes.
yeah, man. That was a great episode.
This one will be a contender, though, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot in this, a lot of unpacking, and I'm glad that we had that first because it kind of sets this up
Yeah, it
to
laid a lot of groundwork.
yeah, I mean, because if you don't understand the language of the birds, it does become difficult to understand these nature gods, such as, Horus or Ra or Thoth, these birds, or even winged beings like Ma'at or Hathor. Like these winged beings are they are part of the language of the birds because it's about understanding that this is all about animism and the spirits, the Neteru, what's called the Neteru, which is the nature gods, the nature elemental powers that we're trying to understand them and align with them and understand our connection to them because it's a very beautiful thing to truly be in alignment with nature consciously. I don't see how you really can be aligned in nature unconsciously, but I'm just saying consciously is way better because I mean obviously it's kind of an oxymoron, but I'm just saying that you get to be alive for it. You get to be awake for it. You get to see it for yourself. You get to think about it for yourself. You don't have somebody else thinking for you.
Mhm.
You're not just running on a program when you're thinking about these things. You're actually thinking about ways of just understanding this world and this universe through symbols, through archetypes, through allegories. It's a very beautiful thing. And that's, the pyramids are trying to help us learn that, as the myths that are associated with the pyramids, the sacred sciences that are associated with the pyramids. Geometry, for people that don't, I mean, one of the biggest things that anybody could ever do for themselves that's actually good, truly, is for one, just go into the sciences of self without fear. And I'm talking about look into all these mystery traditions that have been laid out for hundreds of thousands of years. And I would say, understanding sacred geometry really is understanding esoteric Freemasonry. That's all esoteric Freemasonry is. It's sacred geometry. And that's what those pyramids are.
Mm,
They store the knowledge of the myth, the science.
mm.
And so we're just trying to do our best to be respectful to the temples that were built. I mean, there's a reason they're called temples because it's dealing with the temple. So they built these temples in order to preserve knowledge through geometry.
Mhm.
And it's all occult knowledge because, if you just look at the pyramid through materialistic eyes, you're just going to see, a big pile of bricks and you're not going to understand anything about that. But the more that you go into yourself and start to realize your internal science of self, the esoteric and the occult, that's where you really start to see the beauty in these great monuments.
Yes, and I think it's really important to stress the fact of understanding the difference between Freemasonry as a traditional philosophy, um, a tapestry of deep, important knowledge, and the institution of the
Yes.
lodge system. Those are two separate things, and really don't get it twisted. Don't get those two things conflated, and don't throw out the baby with the bathwater,
Yeah.
because what we're talking about here is so important, and just so beautiful in my opinion. And this has nothing to do with Satanism or the control matrix or the dark priest class in and of itself. Make no mistake about that.
Right. I tell people, look at Freemasonry or any mystery tradition as a spiritual tool. Don't look at it don't look at it as something like, well, I got to join to, figure things out.
Mm,
That's that's you're joining an institution that you have to swear an oath to. And the when it comes to Freemasonry, especially modern Freemasonry, we have to understand that the fraternity, the lodge system, the physical place where people go and meet, it is it is largely corrupt.
mhm.
And these people are I'm not making a blanket statement, because there are good I have heard good masons that are really trying to teach these things, but it's very few. Very, and you can tell in the whole world that it's very, very few. And typically, the real masons are the ones that are not even in the lodge, because the real lodge, I want to make this clear, the real lodge is the spiritual lodge. And there is a dark lodge or a black lodge, and there is a white lodge or a light lodge. And light or white lodge is essentially the enlightenment beings who are spiritually aligned
Who are
to
actually
natural law,
using this knowledge to elevate themselves and the world
and
around them.
others.
Yes, yes.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what true spiritual Freemasonry really is at its core, what it's supposed to be. And dark masonry is based in materialism. Dark masonry is building a dark world. That's what, masonry means. It means to build. To be a mason is to be a builder, whether you're going to build a dark world or a world of light and harmony,
I look at it
you know?
like this: people who want to demonize this information on its face inherently because of what it is or what they think it is, which they have really no idea, they haven't looked into it for themselves, is like, understand that knowledge is a tool, and tools are neutral until they're used, aligned in action with the user's will. It takes on the morality of its user and how it's wielded. It's like saying, oh, every totalitarian regime in history, all the soldiers had guns, so that means guns are bad.
Right.
That's like saying that. And then when a truly empowered individual who is a spiritual gangster pulls out their piece, they're like, fuck yeah, I say strapped, and they pull out their gun and they're like, you're dabbling in dark things. That's their tools. You shouldn't be doing that. You're one of them. It's the same kind of thing. It's like, it's that fear-based mindset. That's the mind control. Is like you're just rejecting it because you're having a knee-jerk reaction because you've associated it with something that has done harm, but you're unable because of ignorance. That's what fear is, always out of ignorance and the lack of understanding of the importance of possessing this knowledge for ourselves is the one thing that is the great equalizer, just in the same exact way that a firearm is the great equalizer on the physical battlefield. Knowledge is the great equalizer on the mental and spiritual battlefield.
Very well said. I completely agree. And, it's like, think of King Arthur. King Arthur goes and pulls the sword from the stone. And, you know, there's all these other evil men, soldiers, who have the sword. And so if you look at that as they have what he doesn't have, and so he goes and he pulls that heavy truth sword out of the stone. And when he does this, that he doesn't really know what to do with it. He doesn't know how to wield it. Well, just like a firearm, you have to learn how to
Mm-hmm.
use it, right? Well, it's the same with knowledge. You have to learn it and come to an understanding of it. And therefore you can be, you know, you can have the ammo of knowledge as your spiritual armor
Mm.
and your spiritual ammo. And so, that's why I really like the allegory or myth of King Arthur, because it's about you taking back your sovereignty by becoming armed,
Hmm.
and
With
armed
truth.
spiritually and even physically,
Right.
mentally, spiritually, and physically. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And you have to cultivate the strength to wield a weapon like that.
absolutely.
Otherwise, you can't even lift it. You can't use it effectively.
Right. Yeah,
Good stuff.
it really is. I mean, there's so much more that can be said, but I think that this is probably a good place to start winding down.
Hmm.
And unless you want to keep it going, but I would just say that we really have covered quite a bit,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it's just a constant. It's not a, and here's the other thing I want to make clear is it's not, life is an unfoldment, right? Life is always unfolding, the new moment. And therefore, this whole mystery is also an unfoldment, but I truly believe that it's not a constant, you know, forever unfoldment. I do believe that we can recover a lot of this beautiful knowledge and restore it, so that way we can, really have this, because it really takes someone who's honest and who is really doing the real research. I mean, if you're arriving at Osiris, it's because you care. And I mean that, because there's no other reason to look into this information unless you really care, whether that be exoteric or esoteric too. Because I mean, look at all these amazing researchers who didn't really have the mystery traditions at their time. They had care to, really assemble their knowledge, because they knew deep down that it meant something. They just couldn't put it together because mystery traditions were, withheld. They were occulted. And, but what I want to say is that this can be reassembled. We can do this. And I would have to say, symbolically, and even literally, we must do this, because I'm not saying that, I'm telling people what to do, but I am saying, if you want to see this world be more, raised out of this mire of materialism and socialism, man's law, then we're going to have to raise ourselves, and we have to use whatever weapon we can get that can help us do that, or tool, if you want to call it that. And I would say this uh, information is just like natural law, or any, of the centralized traditions. They really are a tool and a weapon simultaneously that we must use to raise ourselves out of this, and to protect ourselves, and to use to cut through the BS. And I mean, that's the other thing. Think about X is also the axe,
Hmm.
because vowels are universal. So you're not just, these people of today, these, social engineers, these big, dark occultists with their puppets and everything. They're wielding this X, which means they're wielding the axe
Or the
as a
gavel.
symbol. The gavel, that's right.
Hmm.
They're wielding that. They're wielding that right in our face, and we don't even know, because we don't have this knowledge assembled yet. So they know this knowledge. I mean, I don't know how much they know, but they know enough to use it and know how powerful it is to the subconscious mind.
Oh, they know.
Um, but just I just whoever watches this, just think about the X constantly and see how much you're seeing it these days. It's everywhere, and it's really been everywhere, but now it's being heavily charged as a material symbol rather than a spiritual symbol. Colonizing Mars. I mean, come on. I mean, that's what we're going to do. We're going to colonize Mars instead of raising our frequency here on Earth. We're just going to colonize Mars. It's just this ridiculous, these ridiculous materialist ideas. And I'm not against going to Mars. I'm not against, I'm not against any planets. I'm not against going in space, but I also recognize that it's to colonize means that you're trying to get away from a problem that you haven't faced yet on this planet,
Well,
it's not a,
it's like the the X Files. The
Yep.
X Files said the truth is out there, not in here.
Right.
I've always thought about that.
Yep. You're dead on with that. I actually covered that a little bit in my
It's
show
crazy.
number
I was going to
64.
refer that line, the truth is out there, and it's not even until right when I was about to say it out loud that I realized it's the X Files. Wow, holy shit, That's wild.
Yep. And who does it have? It has the FBI agents who are the male and female, because X also represents female and male unifying.
There's the rune, Gabo.
Yep.
The X.
There you go.
That's the sex rune. Well, one of them, but it really is associated with that and sex magic, things like that.
I mean, it is what I said in my show. It is the order of the day, truly, because it marks the spot.
Mm-hmm. The
it
G
is the
spot.
The what?
The G spot.
G, yeah, exactly. Because G's dealing with the 7, getting back to the middle. The 7 is, people don't understand.
G, green.
The what?
G is green. The heart
Yes.
space, the center, the chest, the treasure chest.
The Anahata heart chakra. That's right. The green. Green is in the middle. Green is, I mean, it's central. So anything's central.
That's why this guy is green.
Spirit is central.
He's green when he's living.
Oh, yeah. That's right. I think I explained that in your last show. So, Osiris being green is in the spring and summer.
Right.
And then Osiris as black is because it's about going below the equator.
Into the darkness and the dead, the land of the dead.
Right, in the land of the dead, to be black with the land, the life that goes into a phase,
the blackening
of blackening or darkening, right? And all that is just, it's going through a phase to where it can be renewed again into beautiful green that is raising to the sun, because life raises to the sun in the spring and summer. I mean, it raises to the sun, all times of the year, but I'm saying, if you have the seasons, you can see that. I mean, even every day is a solar day, because a solar day means that you're raising out of your sleep, out of your tomb. You're raising out of your box to the sun every day. It's powerful. I mean, the correspondences are just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, we've just been sitting here riffing and unraveling for 3 hours now. So I do agree. I mean, we could probably just keep going and talk all night on this topic, but I think 3 hours is kind of the magic number that I had in my mind for this, and that's a good stopping point. I mean, we've covered a lot. I think people are going to get a ton of value out of this. Those who are the true seekers, those who aren't ready for it, maybe that won't keep their attention this whole time. But hey, if you're still listening to it at this point, congratulations. You're on the right path. You're thirsty for truth and knowledge, and that's going to take you places, because not many people have that kind of perseverance to see things through all the way to the end, to get to the peak of the mountain, to get that bird's eye view, right?
That's right.
So, excellent stuff, my brother. This has been amazing. I hope everyone's enjoyed. If you did, again, please just drop down, hit that like button real quick. If you haven't subscribed, what are you even doing with your life? Subscribe, hit the bell notification. So, yeah, that's going to wrap us up. Do follow Mr. Nate Kap here. You can go to cubbyhole.com with a cubby, HWOLE.com, Cubby Whole. Follow his podcast. It's an absolute treasure trove of information on the esoteric sciences. One of my favorite sources, and one that I need to really dive more deeply into. Let the people know anything else you'd like them to know, what you're working on, what you'd like them to check out of yours, and then we'll call this one.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on your show again. It has just been a amazing conversation / presentation, and I really like the points that you brought up, and I'm just really happy to be able to put this information out, because it is so vital to really, take this information in and process it and see how much more that you can pull from it, because there's so much more that, I mean, there's so much more knowledge that you can bring to this type of information. And again, one of the things that I keep on stressing is follow the middle path in everything. Stay on the middle path, stay central, because the center path is really where you're going to find the truth. And that doesn't mean that you can't find the truth everywhere else. It just means that if you stay on point and really focus with clarity and really do the work, you will find so much more purpose in life. And, it takes that care, it takes heart, it takes igniting the self, finding that, that deep, deep sacred feminine care to really ignite the self to move forward in a direction that makes more sense in life. Because life is just not meant to be lived as being enslaved to someone else. It's not meant to be lived in the dark your whole life. It's about to, becoming the hero and being raised. So that being said, yeah, if you want to look further into my work, and also Douglas Martin or Brandon Martin, because we share the Cubby Whole podcast, you can go to cubbyhole.com. I always recommend that you start at podcast number 1 and work your way forward in order, so that way you really get the bigger picture understanding, and because it's in a tapestry. And also, I have a podcast, a video podcast, which is the Outcasting Show, which is with the tagline "Bits of Science Towards Freedom." And I don't, I work on that show here and there, but Cubby Hole is where I'm going to really put a lot more of my time this year. And there's so many shows in the works, and including I'm finalizing the edits for Logan and I's show that just took place.
Yeah, buddy.
The past week, show number 66. So definitely look out for that.
It was another 3-hour banger right there.
Yeah. So it was, it was my first time doing a video show for the Cubby Hole. So that was an interesting start. I put Logan through the ringer on that one, and I was so grateful that he pulled through and really helped me get that started. So, but yeah, that's something to look out for. And also, I would just say the thing that I'm really working on right now is Earth Brain Part 3. And
Oh
I
shit.
don't know exactly when that's gonna what the date is for that yet, but I'm really, really excited for that. And I'm also going to work on an Osiris presentation in the near future. So big, those two things are huge, and I would say that's probably it for me. So yeah, thanks again. I
Yeah.
really appreciate this.
Hell yeah, man. And do not sleep on this man's presentations as well. The podcast is fantastic, but my favorite has been the Oculus and then the Earth Brain Part 1 and 2. So, I highly, highly recommend checking those out as well. And of course, don't forget to check out thewizardfactory.com. Follow us on the various social medias as well, and explore more content here on the channel. I've got a ton of information here for everyone. So there you have it, everybody. That's going to conclude today's episode. I hope everyone enjoyed. We'll see you very soon in the next episode, but until then, be empowered, inspired, and encouraged.